Lime Ears is probably a brand that most people might be unfamiliar with, even those in the audio community. They were founded back in 2012, and since then they have produced a rather impressively broad product portfolio for both custom and universal in-ear monitors. I contacted them a little while ago to hear if I could perhaps check out their Aether R, and to my surprise, they sent over the more affordable Model X as well. Both models arrived in practically identical packaging, with the only differentiating factor being the embossed logo or model name for each one on top of the cover. Flipping it open reveals the plethora of ear tips included and a rather large and hefty metal tin, which again features the appropriate logo and model name for each IEM. Inside each tin are the IEMs tucked away in yet another little protective bag. There's also another element which manufacturers of these products don't normally pay much, if any, attention to, and that's the smell. When I first opened up the box, I got this instantly refreshing whiff of a lime scent. Truth be told, at first I thought this was just some kind of amusing little trick my mind was playing on me, but as I took a good sniff of the little protective bag, I realized that this was no trick. But just to be sure, I sent a message over to Emil over at Lime Ears, and this was his response. Ha! I maybe should try to remain hyper mysterious and claim that it's the scent of refreshing sound that they carry inside. But yeah, cotton pouches are gently sprayed with a drop of natural lime oil. We do it to make the unboxing even more enjoyable. It'll evaporate very soon, but indeed, you got it right. All the best, Emil Stolecki. How cool is that? I really cannot think of any other manufacturer I've come across who added in this kind of subtle detail. Both of the Aether R and the Model X versions that were sent over for review are of the universal fit variant. However, they are available in custom fit options as well. What I found rather interesting is that both models feature the Lime Ears logo on the faceplate of the right earpiece and the logo for that specific model on the left earpiece. I'm not sure if this is the default or if this is just done for the demo models, but I thought it's a nice little detail. If you order either of these through the Lime Ears website though, you've got a ton of options to customize the look. You can pick from a wide range of colors, including simple transparent colors, all the way to rather complex metallic and iridescent designs. You can even have a totally different design for each earpiece. The faceplate too can be customized to feature a variety of finishes such as wood, glitter or carbon fiber. And then something else you can add are some decorative elements such as rhinestones, or even getting a logo which was designed by yourself laser engraved onto the faceplate. My personal favorite, seeing as I'm a bit of a watch collector, is the time machine decoration, which features a number of cogs and bridges like you might find in a mechanical timepiece. It just gives it this really cool retro, almost steampunk kind of vibe. For the demo models that Lime Ears had sent, the shells for both of them is an almost bluish green transparent color, and the same is true for the faceplate on the Aether R, whereas the faceplate for the Model X is made of carbon fiber. When we start looking at the actual shape and features of these IEMs, we can start to see some strong similarities with one another. The shapes of the shells are near identical, but the Aether R is definitely more bulky. No doubt a consequence of fitting in 2 extra drivers as compared to the quad driver setup found in Model X. They both also have a metal ear tip nozzle, and both of them have 3 sound tubes per nozzle. Then there is another little feature on both which is not immediately noticeable from afar, but very cool nonetheless, and that is a little bass boost switch. The first time I encountered this type of feature was on the incredible Profile 8 from In-Ear, almost 2 years ago, although the PP8 did have both a bass and a treble boost switch. To what extent these switches affect the respective signatures is something we'll take a look at when we discuss the sound character of each. The build quality and finishing of the shells is pretty good, and I can feel no seam between the main shell and the faceplate. The 2-pin connector for the cable also meets up almost perfectly with the shell, and there's just a tiny little visible gap if you look really closely. Overall, I'd say that both the Model X and the Aether R have a build quality which is easily comparable to even the most expensive IEMs I have ever tried, which uses the same type of shell designs. Although, having said that, I do find the likes of FiO's FH5 and FH7 to feel even more premium, but that's probably due to the difference between how metal and acrylic feels. The cable is a little on the disappointing side as it just feels a bit generic. That's not to say that it feels of low quality. In fact, I really like how soft it is, but it is also quite thin. Again, if we bring in the FH7 from FiO, the silver cable supplied with the FH7 is just about as soft, but it also looks much more substantial and premium. However, the biggest con I found with both of these lime ear models has to do with the fit. I used even the smallest tips available, but still I could not get either of these IEMs to sit correctly in my ear. The overall length of the nozzle combined with the ear tip was the issue here, and as a result there is a substantial gap between the shell and the inside of my ear, where the shell is actually supposed to rest. So what happens is that I would try to force the ear tip deeper in order to have it sit more securely, but that of course meant that the comfort took a hit. As far as the respective sound signatures are concerned, we've got some similarities here and there, but ultimately they are quite different. Starting off with the Model X, we've got an extremely flat and well extended bass response. Seriously, between about 500 Hz all the way down to as low as just 10 Hz, the response fluctuates no more than about plus or minus 1 decibel. That small peak at 50 Hz is something I see in practically all of my measurements, and so it's probably got something to do with the frequency of my mains power. So I don't think this is something which is actually present in many of the IEMs that I have measured. There's a gradual and smooth peaks and valleys between around 500 Hz and about 3 kHz before we start to see again a climb up into the treble regions. When listening to the Model X, I have to admit that it's not one of my favorite signatures. Whilst I do like the fact that you can get a very flat, accurate and well extended bass and mid-range, the treble is just a bit too bright for me. It lacks a sense of fullness and a touch of warmth. I think the best example I can think of is to think of those small portable speakers from the likes of JBL and Denon. The treble quality you can get out of those speakers can be surprisingly good, but they never really have any good bass, and so the signature overall feels just a little on the thin side. Oddly enough, the Model X actually still manages to sound quite smooth, but the overall impression I'm getting due to those treble peaks is just not something that sounds natural to me. I'm sure there are audiophiles who actively seek out headphones and IEMs with a higher than average level in the treble, and they might actually really enjoy the Model X, but I'm looking for something that sounds more natural. To some extent, the bass switch can change things for the better, and this is especially true for very low volume listening sessions. Taking a look at the graph and comparing the difference in signatures, we can see that the bass boost is actually quite substantial. In fact, the graph has been changed slightly to center both graphs around the 1 kHz mark, as that just makes it easier to get a clearer picture of the signatures in comparison with one another as a whole. But in reality, the bass boost is more than the 4 or 5 decibels shown by the graph. And therein lies a bit of a problem, as this bass boost doesn't just increase the very low bass frequencies, but it actually affects the mids substantially too. This results in a V-shaped signature, which can be arguably more enjoyable for many music genres. To some extent, it reminds me a bit of FiO's FA7, and if we compare their response graphs, we can certainly see some similarities in their signatures. Where the FA7 has even more of a bloated bass response, the Model X in contrast has more treble energy. Between the FA7 and the Model X, the latter seems more balanced and refined, but my preference would lie for something more closely related to a signature that falls between the Model X's two different bass responses. And that leads us to the Aether R. Where the signature of the Model X tends to lead more to a V-shaped signature, the response of the Aether R is more W-shaped. No, the Aether R does not have the super deep bass reach that the Model X has, but this signature really just feels so much more balanced, coherent, and refined. Admittedly, I think it would have benefited from just a bit more treble sparkle. This is especially true once you engage the bass boost. The boost is nowhere near as extreme as the one on the Model X, nor is it as invasive, as it really only affects the bass frequencies, along with just a mild increase in some of the mid-range. Honestly, if this IEM had just a bit more treble, it would have been absolutely amazing. If we compare the graph of the Aether R with its bass boost to that of the FA7, we can see that the Aether R has considerably less bass presence, but the thing I want to focus on here is the treble. The FA7 has one of the best treble responses I've ever heard, as it came across wonderfully detailed, yet still remained smooth. So when we compare the graphs, we can see that the FA7 does indeed have some more treble energy, and so if I could get the Aether R with its bass boost and with the treble response of the FA7, wow, that would make me a happy person. In fact, throw in the comfort of the FA7 as well, and that right there would quite possibly be my endgame IEM. So whilst I really do enjoy the signature of the Aether R, and I really do like the versatility you get of an onboard bass boost, I would love to see Lime Ears create a newer iteration with more treble presence and sparkle. When it comes to judging the value of both the Model X and the Aether R, well, this is a bit of a tough cookie. The reason I say this is because the Model X retails for around $1,000, whereas the Aether R retails for just over $1,300. That's not exactly pocket change, especially considering that these are not even custom fit models. If we only consider the sound signatures and the bass boost feature, then both of these IEMs, at least to some extent, seem like reasonably priced products. However, the problem for Lime Ears, and indeed essentially all of these niche IEM manufacturers, is the existence of companies like, but specifically, FiiO. Now, I know that the specific parts of the world where products are made can and do have a substantial impact on the final retail price. But at the end of the day, there are only two things that matter to a person who walks into a store or orders online. And that is, what can I get for X amount of cash? And do I absolutely have to spend that much to get what I want? And the reality is that makes it really difficult for companies like Lime Ears to compete with the likes of FiiO. With the Aether R, I think Lime Ears still has a decent leg up on FiiO in terms of outright sound quality, and so if that's the most important thing to you, then you might want to check it out. But if we look at the sheer rate with which FiiO are improving their products, then, well, Lime Ears really are going to have to invest some serious resources into the research and development of the comfort and build quality of their products. Again, the build quality is by no means bad on either of these models, but FiiO's current flagship hybrid truly looks and feels like a premium product, and yet it costs less than half of what the Model X does, and around a third of what the Aether R does. I really truly do hope that Lime Ears will be able to do that, because I genuinely do like what they've done with these two models. The potential for them to make truly outstanding products is definitely there, and although I'm not exactly a fan of the sound of the Model X, I can still respect what they've attempted with it, and for that reason, I'd love to be able to see where they can take things from here. Well, that's it for this quick little review of these two Lime Ears models. If you've got any questions or comments, please do leave them down below. If you've liked this review, please hit that like button, and if you did not like it, please hit that dislike button twice. That's all from me for now, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers!